My name is Sheila Uemura. I'm a host of Eyes on Japan.
My name's David Price. I'm the co-host.
Today we have a second time of the Mr. Jesper Koll's economic seminar.
Jesper is a leading economist in Japan, and he offered to give his bullish outlook on the Japanese economy.
This is a Shukan Shincho, and this is Shukan Gendai, and this is a Shukan Bunshu, which is a Yomiuri newspaper, which has 9 million circulations, which are the most circulated in the world. This is a Mainichi. It is front page. Sankei newspaper. It's Asahi fabricated, articles has been withdrawn.
It's interesting, and I'd be curious to know the tone of the article in the Japanese newspapers versus the Wall Street Journal and maybe even the Japan Times English version, Sheila.
We should report the real story, what's going on about the 1945 or before World War II or after World War II. That's media's duty.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Q&A, Sheila. It was a lot of fun, and he's a very entertaining, at times humorous gentleman.
Let's take a look.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Price, and I have the enviable task of following Jesper on the microphone. So we're going to do, I don't have to say much, though. I'd like to have about 15 minutes of Q&A.
What's your view on immigration, and as a result, are you optimistic about the labor market?
Huge admiration for Japanese politicians for their honesty on immigration. Because unlike Americans or unlike Europeans, right, they don't placard the whole thing, but they're actually very pragmatic, right? You want to preserve your own culture, and that's fine. But when you look at the facts, immigration is increasing in an extremely pragmatic way. Don't get emotional about this. Look at the facts. Tokyo, Greater Tokyo, 5 years ago, hi-Nihonjin, non-Japanese people, as percentage of employment, was 3.2%. Today, it is 5.4%. The Japanese are unbelievably pragmatic when it comes to immigration. I am a perfect example of this. Woof. それはないかな。ちょっといろいろ。でも why am I saying this? When I arrived as a student, I was allowed to work for 12 hours a week. Today, if you arrive as a student, you're allowed to work for 35 hours a week, which is more than a Frenchman does anyways. So, there is a pragmatism to the whole thing. Now, immigration is not an issue of rules and regulations primarily. Immigration is primarily an issue of the Shanai Bunka. 6 years ago, my friend Ninami-san at Lawson, when he was the CEO, he ordered his HR department, I want you to hire non-Japanese. The Jinjibu said, no way, we can't do this. And he said, excuse me, remember me? I'm the boss. They got it done. Lawson, over the last 4 years, every third person they have hired in Japan is a non-Japanese. Hiring a non-Japanese is complicated. Japanese companies, and I'm being way too blunt, and we haven't even had anything to drink, right? Japanese companies operate like a club, right? You recruit from 5 or 6 daigaku, right? And everybody buys in onto a seniority-based system. You know who is the good guy, who is the bad guy, right? But basically, there's very little differentiation that actually gets paid, right? So it is effectively closed to lateral entry, right? Now, what you need to do to hire outsiders, and I'm going to be blunt, women in many ways are outsiders in Japanese corporations. To hire an outsider, you need to have an attempt at an objective evaluation system. So introducing an evaluation system, right, to allow outsiders in, it's a shanai bunka. It is an internal issue. And I think with Nakamura-san and Hitachi, right, I think that this has started to change. You know, it'll be interesting to see the implementation of it, right? I am having fierce debates in some of these, shingikai, right? Because they always say, well, what about immigration, right? I said, look, immigration is all very nice and well, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is, how do you deal with your human resources, with your human capital, right? Nobody has the perfect answer on that. The Japanese old system was fantastic. During the high growth area, absolutely fantastic. And even, I would argue, during the collapse of the bubble economy, the Japanese employment system was fantastic. I do not say this lightly. People forget. You look at Japan. What happened here? Where are we? What is this here? Roppongi. Oh, God, Roppongi. Student days. What is the price of an apartment here in this neighborhood? The absolute price is down to where it was in about 1981, 82. Right? I mean, the amount of the collapse of the bubble economy, of destruction of wealth, is absolutely spectacular. And the baby boom generation, right, was completely screwed. Because the baby boom generation enters the workforce in the 1980s, takes out a mortgage in the mid to late 1980s, right? And real estate prices have been falling ever since. But the Japanese employment system was fantastic because they honored the contract, right? Japanese did not get laid off. Japanese banks did not foreclose on their mortgages, very, very few of them, right? It was kuroshi. There was a balance sheet recession. Everybody paid back their mortgage, right? Unemployment in this country never rose above 6%. Never did you have to worry about shakai funso, right? The system was unbelievably stable. Look at Hong Kong. I mean, this is not Gyakushi Sankoka. This is something else, right? But maybe soon it's going to be Gyakushi Sankoka, and then we really have a problem, right? In Japan, did you have to worry about this? No. The system worked. It was adjusted with these part-time workers, so there was flexibility, there was pragmatism that came into the system. I will give you my most powerful number, my most powerful statistics on Japan. 44% of all Japanese over the age of 20, 44% of all Japanese over the age of 20 have no debt. There is no mortgage debt. There is no credit debt. And those 44% own, fair and square, the home that they live in. Because the baby boom generation never got disenfranchised. So in that respect, I think the employment system was actually very stable. Because what is the result I'm supposed to produce as an economy? Is it GDP growth? Really? Is that all you want to do? As a stock market strategist, yes, please. But in reality, for the overall well-being of society, they've done a phenomenal job. Now, this is changing. The Seidai Kotai has happened. The baby boom generation's contract has been honored. Now, for the young generation, the time has come to give them an opportunity. And they will be given that opportunity because of basic economics, because the supply of labor is actually starting to shrink. Does that make sense?
It looks like, the consumption tax has had a consumption dampening effect. What's the impact of that going to be? 1.3%.
Retail sales up 1.9%. And all the commentator wanted, ask about, oh, it's negative number. I said, no, 1.9%. That's way better than expected, right? The point I'm trying to make, the consumption tax has definitely generated a volatility, right? So the thing went up by 8, GDP went up by 8 in the first quarter, and it went down by 8 in the second quarter. Now, that means nil. The third quarter just ended, right? Who knows what the data is going to be, but you know, we and the rest of the world thinks it's somewhere around 2.5% to 3%, right? So it's not a massive V-shaped recovery, right? But the drag on growth comes from exports, right? It is not the domestic economy. When you look at confidence of small and medium-sized companies, that has recovered very nicely. When you look at the labor market, that is recovering very, very nicely. Today we got another drop in the unemployment rate, right? So I think the basics are actually very, very much in place. Japan is not a high-growth economy. This thing does not do 3% growth. I mean, it just doesn't work, right? I'm the bullish man. You know what the bullish man says? Over the next 5 years, 1.6%. And the IMF thinks I'm hopping mad. You know, they think at 0.8, 0.9, something like that, right? But I look, again, at the fundamentals here. I think your leading indicator should be one thing. I mean, all of this stuff that I've said, how do I verify or falsify, right? It's one data. Housing starts. If I'm right, and there is a new middle class, that all these little boys and girls, right, who are part-time workers, if they get full-time jobs, their lifetime income security is going up. The banks are ready to lend. Real estate is cheap, very affordable, right? So you would expect that these people step up, take out a mortgage to buy that home, right? So that's where we need to see a re-acceleration coming through. If you need to write down a number, right, we think in the year 2015, the Japanese economy is going to grow by 2% in real terms, and is going to grow by 3.5% in nominal terms, right? If that's of any, so that's, I can just throw out these authoritative numbers, you know, that.
Imagine for a minute your wish comes true and tomorrow morning you find yourself reborn a 23-year-old Japanese woman. You're about to get out of college. What do you do with your life? What kind of career do you see? Where do you see potential?
I mean, fantastic question, because it goes right into something. I mean, I studied mathematics undergraduate, right? I would do mathematics. I would probably now actually study engineering, and not this weird stuff that makes applications on iPhones, right? But real engineering, right? But the point is a very important one, right? Which goes back again to the HR management, right, of Japanese corporations, right? But let me answer, sorry, before I get into that. What do I want to do? If you give me, if I'm 23 years old and you give me, how much does he need from Berlin? If you give me $10,000, that's not enough. No, okay, I can leverage it. Okay, so you give me, how much do I need? What? No, exactly. So what do you want to do? What, you know, let's just say, okay, fine, you come to me and said, hey, you seem to know what you're talking about. You know, let's do something in Japan. What are the businesses that you want to do, right? The first thing is I want to build the Louis Vuitton hospital chain for Japan, right? Healthcare expenditure by the demographics is going to grow at a rate of at least 3 times of what GDP is growing, right? Now, healthcare is a tough business, as many of you know, because you're dealing with a regulator, right? So I need to be pretty good on that, but in terms of basic tailwinds, right, and with the deregulation of co-payments, right, I think that actually inroads, you know, are starting to be coming through, right? Second thing I want to do is I want to become a farmer, right? In Japan, of all this agricultural debate, the key issue is that 17% of the arable land is currently empty. Nobody's using it. Nokyo, the agricultural cooperative, is not stupid, right? This needs to be utilized. Japan has fantastic water quality, excellent food safety standards, and the price level is now in line so that you can actually successfully export. So I want to export the Louis Vuitton apples, right, from Japan to the rest of the world, right? What else? What would you do? I want to build homes, right? If you look at the housing stock in Japan, right, the housing stock in Japan is actually extremely decrepit still. They have just, no, as of the 1st of January next year, they're going to change the Sozokuze, what's that? The inheritance tax, right? The inheritance tax is going up, but the amount of your real estate asset that you're allowed to deduce is going to go up as well. This will be the wealth transfer in Japan. Because if you buy a home today at 100, your tax assessment is at the Rosenka, right? Which is an 80% discount. So my son can inherit an asset that is actually worth 100, right? Basically at 20, which is the best tax planning that the Japanese corporations can do. So building German homes, right? I think would be a fantastic business, to actually do here. So creature comforts, anything that improves the quality of life of that new middle class, those are the businesses that I really want to be at.
So my question is this. When you say Japanese corporation, I think the world sees it primarily as goods rather than services, especially on the global theater. And the question is this. Would you agree with me that Japanese services companies, financial services, consulting, tax, audit, have not really been able to follow in the footsteps of their manufacturing brothers? And why is that? Is it simply a problem of language, or is there something else? And if this is going to happen, if they're going to make progress in the future, what is it that they should be looking at now?
You know, and you see exactly what I'm going through, right? Services, manufacturing. In manufacturing, consumer electronics, right? I will answer your question. You see how I'm going to go with that, right? Does anybody know who Michael Porter is? So Michael Porter is the global competitive guru from the Harvard Business School. So I have a big fight with Michael, right? Because he keeps on telling me that, oh, Jesper, the Japanese, they haven't invented anything since the Sony Walkman. To which, at one point, 8 years ago, I said, oh, Michael, that's interesting. What car do you drive? And he said, oh, I drive a Lexus. It's fantastic. So he didn't even know that a Lexus was a Japanese, sorry, so it's kind of weird, right? The reason I make this point is that, I beg you, consumer electronics is in everybody's hands, right? And obviously, Sony is not Apple, right? There's a big difference that has happened. But Japan has not lost competitive edge, as you point out, in manufacturing, right? We reckon, by the way, the first, what is that thing called? I can't say the name, but that thing that revolutionized the way you look at a phone. You know how nobody cares about phoning anymore, about all this other stuff? So that first thing, the first generation, Japanese components were less than 10%, right? The new thing that was launched just a couple of weeks ago, right? We reckon 60% of the components made by Japanese companies and can only be made by Japanese companies when you talk to the engineers, right? 100% of the camera, right, is from a Japanese company, right? It's actually a competitor. You know that, the camera is made by Sony, right? It's quite amazing, right?
They can't buy from Korea.
The what?
They can't buy from Korea.
Yeah, well, they're manufactured there, right? Yeah. Okay, so but anyway, so the competitiveness in the industrial space is there, right? And we can give you lots of examples, right, on where that's happening. Services, why not? What are the services that are globally tradable? So financial services, right? Okay, Japan, okay, wait a second, talent. But financial services was deregulated very aggressively after the Plaza Accord, right? This was ruthless, American policy, because America is very good at financial services, and financial services depend on rules. And America sets the rules. Japanese banks, at the time, were dealing with the aftermath of the collapse of the bubble economy. So, by definition, you didn't really have a chance to really become a global player, right? Now, have you done the maths? So America's largest bank, so JP Morgan, right? We bought Bear Stearns, or we got, what happened? Anyway, so it was about to collapse, and we sort of agreed to buy it, right? If you compare that investment to the investment that Mitsubishi UFJ made in Morgan Stanley, the investment that Mitsubishi UFJ made in Morgan Stanley is 2.5 times more profitable for Mitsubishi Financial Group. So the Japanese financial institutions, okay, this is one example, I get that, right? You've got Oryx Corporation, right, which bought at distressed levels, right, one of the largest European asset managers, Robeco. You had Sumitomo Bank, which bought at distressed levels the aircraft leasing business of RBA. Very smart investments. And these are not trophy investments. These are not asset plays. These are recurring businesses. So I think you are absolutely right. 裏側見てみるとね、まあサービス産業はほぼダメじゃないですか。If you are a bit more focused on what's actually going on right now, what's the name of that guy?
Well, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. You remember? No, I mean, they always say, my God, that's not really a Japanese company. But, I mean, look at what SoftBank's doing. It's pretty cool. Oh, it's SoftBank, it's not NTT. Okay, I get that. I mean, that's the nature of the game. There's competition. So I'm not sure, right, that it's quite as fair that the change in the game is actually starting to happen, right? Now, advertising, media, legal services, it becomes an issue of who sets the rules. TPP, right, is absolutely important, not because of this stupid agricultural thing. That's just fun and games. I'm going to drop names for 30 seconds. So what's the name of the guy? So Abe, right, in January after he got elected, right, he had like a meeting with a bunch of people, yada, right, and you call in the sort of token gaijin and sort of say, woo-hoo, what about the rest of the world? What do they want from me? And I said, look, I mean, I'm just in the money world. You're going to have to give me something concrete, right? And at that point, Japan was not, part of the TPP negotiation, right? It was very interesting, right? So I said, okay, I need something that I can stand in front of investors and say, this is for real, right? And, if you futz around on the TPP, it doesn't work, right? So, God, now I'm not his PR agent, right? But this was actually interesting. So he looks me straight in the eye and says, Koll-san, TPP is not about agriculture. TPP is about my country, Japan, being part of the club that makes the global rules. And you go, okay, that's cool. You're ambitious. Okay, that's the way to look at it. So for the service sector, right, again, a lot of it has to do, right, with who sets the rules, right? And in that respect, I think it's quite interesting. Now, service sector, I mean, other aspects of the service sector, what's that? Intellectual stuff, right? I mean, you keep on telling me, right, that the Japanese music industry, J-pop, is one of the most profitable music industries in the world, right? I mean, again, if you look at the software sector, I mean, I don't know whether you like AKB48, right? But, I mean, this is a fantastic business model, right? And it's expanding very nicely overseas. Dentsu, is there somebody here from Dentsu? They're just too big at home, so people get lazy, right? Airlines, I mean, which airline would you rather fly? Sorry, is there anybody here from? Anyways, you see, I think, it's not a language issue. I mean, everything is a language issue, of course, right? But, I mean, that's too simplistic, right? There's power involved, and there's power involved in the services. The other thing is this. I mean, I'm sorry, this is just a little bit of fun economics. I mean, sorry, I start out with this. How many of you take the Narita Express? Okay, you take the Narita Express, right? And this is what happens, right? I mean, there's this smiling girl, right? It tends to be always a girl, right? And she comes through the thing, and you pay. Now, if you buy one of these cans of Coca-Cola or an orange juice, what's the price? The price is 110 or 120 yen. It's exactly the same as a Jiro Hanbaiki, right? That is not possible if you calculate the cost. It just does not work, right? how is this possible? Is because she is employed by a kogaisha, right, for JR. It is considered to be part of the service, and that kogaisha is loss-making. But JR is perfectly happy to subsidize this company. In Germany, when you take a similar highly efficient train, right, if you're lucky, somebody will come through with the train. But you got to be lucky, right? And the price of a can of Coke is 3 times that of the price of a Coke from a vending machine, right? So Japan has service, but does not have service sector productivity. Now, there's a measurement problem. When you think about it, how do you measure this girl's productivity? So she sells 30 cans of Coke, right? The amount of cans of Cokes that she sells is actually dependent on the number of okyakusan who are in the train. So let's say that the train is maxed out. The train has 100% utilization, and she sells 80 cans of Coke, right? How can she increase her productivity? The only way she can increase her productivity is, oops, are we going backwards, forward, sorry, is by actually raising prices, right? Now, Americans are very, very good at raising service sector prices. I mean, this is a disaster. Look at, education, tuition, school and other fees. Look at Japan, that stepped down, right, in the year 2000, right? So it's quite interesting, now, again, running a company for service and actually collecting the money, right? That's where obviously the big challenge is, right? Which is why you should all bank with JP Morgan, because we charge no fees.
Arnaud, I'm from Crédit Agricole, a French bank. So we are pretty good in France in creating debt and spending more than we earn. In Japan, in fact, the level of public debt is more than 200%. What would you expect from that level on the real economy?
Market, the government bond, right, I think is one of the worst asset classes in the world. I think that, part of the reason for why I think that the yen is going to be very weak is exactly the fact that, the public deficit, has continued to grow and is likely to continue to grow. So it's the exchange rate that takes a big part of the adjustment mechanism. I have a big argument with Kyle Bass, right? And Kyle is somebody who makes money out of saying the JGB market is going to crash imminently, right? My view is as follows. Kyle, yes. The Japanese will default, but they will default on their own people, not on their financial obligations. It's exactly the same way that Japan dealt with the nuclear disaster. If you take away 30% of your effective supply of power and you're fine, the only reason that was possible is because the Japanese stood in front of its people and says, good afternoon, we're now going to save 21% of power demand. And the universal response was, hai, domo. So what is going to happen? Let's be specific, and this is where the appointment of Mr. Shiozaki to the Koseisho is very, very important, right? You're going to start to see cuts in entitlements. You're going to start to see means testing, for example, being introduced. If your net financial assets are more than 10 million yen and or your home equity is more than 25 million yen, you will no longer be entitled to full public medical care, right? Now, these are study groups inside the Ministry of Finance right now, right? And you would hope that the MOF does these sort of study groups. This is not Prime Minister Abe standing in front of a podium and says, good afternoon, this is going to be our new policy. But as you know, my out-of-pocket expense 5 years ago was 10%. Today, it is 30%. And this is going to continue to be going up, right? So from that perspective, I think that, yes, there will be a default, but that default is going to be on the Japanese people. Let me close with one thing, since I've pulled my age card, 30 years in Japan. So when I had my 25th anniversary in Japan, right, got together with a couple of friends, yada, right? And one of them said, so, Koll-san, what have you actually learned? What have you actually learned about this country? Which is like, I mean, these are weird questions, right? You're better off in an onsen, right? But, you know, so rule number 1, never ever underestimate the ability and willingness of the Japanese people to suffer together. Rule number 2, never ever underestimate the ability and willingness of the Japanese ruling elite to make sure rule 1 is applied. Thank you very much.
Today we have a part 2, Mr. Jesper Koll's seminar.
I thought it was really good, Sheila. The show tonight shows the reception and the cocktail hour afterwards, where we talked to other business leaders and got their opinion on Jesper's speech and their businesses and the economy as well. Directly following the seminar was a reception with food and drink. It was a really interesting time to get the opinion of business leaders.
My name is Robert Gulak. I am the Vice President of Advanced Bionics for Asia Pacific. Advanced Bionics is a medical device company. We're based out of Switzerland. Our parent company is Sonova. We're partnered with our parent company Phonak as well. And we do cochlear implants for deaf children. This was, we've lived in Japan for a very long time, but we're away for a few years, just back for a year now, and very interested in understanding all the complexities about what's happening with the Japanese economy. We know all about Abenomics from reading it in the newspaper, and sometimes you try to sort through all the complications. And what Jesper did here in an hour's presentation was to really give a different angle and perspective, and a lot of positive hope about how strong Japan really is. And it really was a fascinating hour to spend this evening. So it was wonderful. It's terrific.
My name is Grace Fromm. I'm a Deputy Managing Director for a communications company called Weber Shandwick. I have off and off, this is my 3rd time in Japan, but we've probably been here about almost 20 years total. No, I think it's really important as non-Japanese, I think, companies really need to and want to understand the opportunities here. And like Robert said here, I think today's session was really important because I think we need to read the data right. And sometimes they sound negative, but today I think Mr. Koll just put a very positive and optimistic twist. And of course for our companies here that we all represent, it's great news that there are opportunities and Japan is actually growing. So that was very, very important, I think.
Sure. My name's Adam Johnston. I'm the Managing Director for Robert Half Japan, and it's been a very successful evening. Sure. So I think there's 2 real purposes. Obviously, one is a networking event and client appreciation. So essentially thanking everyone for their continued support. But certainly, obviously, Robert Half pride ourselves on thought leadership, and no one better on Japanese economics than Jesper Koll to bring exactly that. So, we know Jesper's, direction, and we knew it would be optimistic, and in a sense, showing the opportunity that is here in Japan. Sure. So, I'd say the biggest industries for us would certainly be insurance, obviously financial services, medical device, medical technology, life science, and probably IT sector as well. Yeah, probably from the services side rather than hardware, obviously. So for us, it's been very, very good. Obviously, we're Gaishikei focused, but our business has certainly grown. We're continuing to expand. We see that the future still looks strong. There's a very big demand for bilingual talent in Japan, and obviously it's quite a strong skill shortage, candidate shortage. So provided that we can access that unique high-skilled talent, then the future is very bright for us. Sure. So with us, we would be around about, I would say, 65% non-Japanese national employees. So in fact, yeah, if you step into the Robert Half office in Tokyo, you can forget that you're actually in Tokyo. So I wouldn't say that we have problems, but certainly there is an element of understanding, and it's both sides, and I think that's the really positive thing, is that both sides, obviously, from our side being foreign affiliate to Japanese national back, we're both trying to understand how do we do business together, Obviously, we do come unstuck with some of the processes. They do.
Company try to get into Japanese market, or why try to increase your revenue in this market? What's the charm area for your country or for your company?
Sure. Well, I think for us specifically, obviously we specialize in finance and technology, from a technology perspective, both still within financial services, but more from an IT perspective. There's been a lot of business transformation in Japan in the last 3 years. So most of the work that we're doing is in some way related to business process re-engineering, system implementation, process upgrade. So essentially, it's taking opportunity from the fact that Japan, maybe 5 years ago, wasn't investing in technology or looking at transforming their internal back office departments, and now they are, because obviously things are going much better.
How do you estimate your Japanese economy for future, at least in the short term or long term?
No, we feel that there's some long-term legs in this. Obviously, we think up until 2020 is quite prosperous. To Jesper's point, we think that the straight line of the government is pretty consistent, which is certainly going to help. Obviously, the softening yen's done some things for some of our clients. So we think over the short to medium term, things are good. Obviously, the talent shortage will continue. It will get worse. But I think there's a lot of things in play in the market. I think the Japan job market is changing a lot. It's no longer a job for life. Younger people are moving more often. People are looking for opportunities where they're not being remunerated based upon tenure, but actually based upon performance. So I think that the market's moving a lot more now and will continue to move, where in the past it has not. So I think there is, long-term things look good. I think, I wouldn't say that we feel like the Japanese economy is booming, but I'd certainly feel that it's probably slightly above neutral, and that's good. It's a big economy, so it doesn't have to power at 3% increases. So we're optimistic on the economy, but we're certainly optimistic on the fact that Japan is trading much more with foreign companies, much more globalized. So that's a positive thing for us, because obviously focusing on bilingual skill sets, that sort of increases that demand. And we're actually finding a lot of Japanese nationals who live abroad quite keen to come home, which they haven't been keen to do so much in the past 10 years. So it's very positive. So we're headquartered out of San Francisco, and obviously in Japan here we're in Otamachi in Tokyo. And myself, I'm from Australia, where we're headquartered in Sydney there.
My name is Omar Rivera de Leon. I'm originally from Canada, and I've been in Japan for the last 10 years. So first and foremost, I'm a father. I have 2 children, and during the daytime I work at AXA Life Insurance Company, doing project management related work. So Japan's actually a very important market for AXA. We contribute a lot to the global revenues, and there's actually some interesting developments in Japan for life insurance company, one of them being the health insurance market. It's an aging society, which is an opportunity for us to create new products that hopefully will be well received by the Japanese population. So lots of opportunities for us. Yeah, it's very relevant, especially being with life insurance. As I mentioned, there's opportunities in the health industry, health-related insurance, and also retirees. So there's a lot of people in Japan that are at retirement age or about to approach retirement age, and that's an opportunity for us as an insurance company to provide them with a good product to help them secure their future. Yes, I think AXA is well positioned. We're one of the larger foreign insurance companies in Japan, and just now we're starting to build up a lot more brand value in Japan and get more recognition. So I think there's a lot of very good opportunities for our company. So Canada and Japan, there's actually a lot of similarities. Both of the countries are very safe, they're very clean, people are very courteous, respectful. So these are the easy parts for me. I feel like I haven't really changed countries. But being from an English-speaking country, Japan is full of different experiences for me, culture, language-wise. So it's very exciting. And it's a good opportunity for my children to learn a new culture.
Well, Sheila, I think that was an excellent event. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, very much.
I thought it was great. Jesper is a very dynamic speaker. As I said, I didn't enjoy following him with the Q&A, but it was really, really interesting, and we look forward to seeing more of him.
if you have a question and a request an opinion, please contact us. Sayonara.
Sayonara.